presented undeniable evidence that Washington had foreknowledge of the Pearl Harbor attack, but it denied it to the two commanders. Now, as the admirals on the Naval Court of Inquiry heard the evidence being read, they threw their pencils on the floor in disgust. Admiral Kimmel was completely vindicated by the hearing, which laid all blame upon Washington. They couldn't name FDR, the president, by name, but it was pretty clear who was being implicated. The Army Pearl Harbor Board also reached the conclusion that Washington had complete foreknowledge of the attack. In fact, its closing words were this: "Up to the morning of December the 7th, 1941, everything that the Japanese were planning to do was known to the United States." Now, the public reacted with hate mail and death threats when the Roberts Commission report was published. How did they reacted to the exoneration of Kimmel, in short? And the answer is they didn't react because President Roosevelt ordered that those reports be suppressed and made top secret. But after World War II, a number of authors tried to bring the truth to the public. This is just one example. This book appeared in the 1950s, The Final Secret of Pearl Harbor, The Washington Contribution, by Rear Admiral Robert Theobald. Admiral Theobald was in Pearl Harbor commanding destroyers on the day of the attack. The real breakthrough came in 1982 when John Toland, the dean of World War II historians, published this book, Infamy. Because at this point, much more information was available about Washington's foreknowledge than was available at the time of the 1944 hearings. Now, in 1986, the New American Magazine asked me to do a cover story summarizing the findings of Toland and other authors. And after that, hold on, not so fast, Mr. Perloff, you've been talking about Washington's foreknowledge. What's the evidence for that? Let's just talk about that. How did the president know that Pearl Harbor was coming? One was through the Purple Code. This is the code that Japan used to communicate to its embassies and major consulates throughout the world. Very complex code. It had to be enciphered and deciphered by a machine. The Japanese were positive no one could break that code. But in 1940, some talented crypto analysts in the Army cracked that code, built their own machines, and in 1941, when relations were tense between the U.S. and Japan, we were decoding their messages on a same-day basis. And every day, those messages were sent to President Roosevelt in a locked pouch. They were also sent to the Army Chief of Staff, the Secretary of War, and the Secretary of the Navy and State. Now, what did these messages reveal? Well, they revealed that Japanese spies in Hawaii were sending Tokyo the exact locations of our ships and dock. They revealed that the Germans had been told by their Japanese, the ambassador to Germany from Japan, that war was about to break out. They revealed that in America, the Japanese embassies were told to start burning all their secret documents. Why? Because when war breaks out, you lose your immunity, and your offices are going to be overtaken by the hostile power that you're in. Now, if you've ever seen a movie called Tora, 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 it's an old Hollywood movie about Pearl Harbor. It shows the Secretary of State, Cordell Hull, that is the real Cordell Hull. In the movie, you see him being given the Japanese declaration of war after the attack by the Japanese ambassadors, and he reacts with shock and surprise. But in reality, Cordell Hull was not surprised. He'd already read the Declaration of War in his own office, the decoding of it, as had President Roosevelt on December the 6th, the first 13 parts of that 14-part message. How else did Washington know? Through several individual warnings. Joseph Grew, our ambassador to Japan, had told FDR in 1941 he had received positive information from the Peruvian embassy in Japan that if relations grew worse between the U.S. and Japan, the Japanese were planning to attack Pearl Harbor with all their strength. Edgar Hoover, according to witnesses, also warned FDR based on information received from a Yugoslavian double agent named Dusko Popov. And you can see Dusko Popov interviewed on that documentary from the BBC, Sacrifice of Pearl Harbor. In that same documentary, you can see U.S. Brigadier General Elliot Thorpe interviewed, who was the U.S. military observer in Java. Now, Java was under the control of the Dutch at that time, and the Dutch had also cracked Japan's codes, learned of the Pearl Harbor attack. General Thorpe received a warning from them. He thought it was so serious he sent a total of 4 warnings about the Pearl Harbor attack to Washington until finally received a message from General Marshall's department saying, send no more warnings concerning Pearl Harbor. Colonel F.G.L. Weijerman was the Dutch military attaché in Washington at that time. He personally warned General Marshall of the attack. Also, Senator Guy Gillette and Congressman Martin Dies both said later they'd received information concerning the attack on Pearl Harbor and had shared it with President Roosevelt, who told them to pass it no further. Now, because at this point, new information had been broken by author Robert Stinnett in this book, Day of Deceit. Stinnett discovered through the Freedom of Information Act the United States had not only broken Japan's diplomatic codes, we'd also cracked their naval codes. and were reading their naval messages, and as the Japanese fleet approached Pearl Harbor, it did not maintain complete radio silence. The most significant message was this one: Admiral Yamamoto to Japanese First Air Fleet, November the 26th, 1941. The task force, keeping its movement strictly secret and maintaining close guard against submarines and aircraft, shall advance into Hawaiian waters, and upon the very opening of hostilities shall attack the main force of the United States fleet and deal it a mortal blow. The first air raid is planned for the dawn of X Day, exact date to be given by later order. There is no mistaking the meaning of this message. Now, I wanted to mention that following publication of our New American articles, I received a note of thanks from Colonel Walter C. Short, U.S. Army retired, the son of the late Pearl Harbor commander. Also, we were contacted by the attorney for the Kimmel family, who asked permission to use one of our New American articles in their own efforts to exonerate Admiral Kimmel's reputation. I'd like to mention that both Admiral Kimmel and General Short have been exonerated by a resolution of the United States Congress of any wrongdoing in the matter of Pearl Harbor.
So did you see that, folks? And look, and they even made two of the admiral's scapegoats. For the entire duration of the war, they let the public think that it was the fault of two specific admirals.
Wouldn't do that, Bunchy. Come on, they're just so honest and nice in there. You mean there's corruption up there in them ranks?
You know, it wasn't until 1946 that they had, or 1944, excuse me, at Pearl Harbor that they had done trials and exonerated him. But, you know, like I said, don't take my word for it. That's why we showed you Perloff, because he's a professional investigator.
So what you're saying is that the Council on Foreign Relations is behind all these wars? You mean they're the ones who made the rules of engagement for Vietnam, and that's why we couldn't win? Because we let some people in the secret society make the rules of engagement? Oh my God! We must be a bunch of dummies!
Well, just as Woodrow Wilson said, some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacturing are afraid of somebody, something. They know there is a power so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they had better not speak about it above their breath in condemnation of it. And here we are.
Lucifer sighting! I just saw him. He boogied right through the room.
You know,
did you catch him, folks? Oh
and that's what we're talking about, really. When you put it in a nutshell, we are talking truly about the war between good and evil. We are stewards of this planet. We are stewards of this country. We are stewards of our life, but we don't accept any or very little responsibilities for ourselves, and we're always looking for somebody else to make us accountable, or to be accountable for us.
We've been hypnotized. We've been hypnotized. We've been propagated.
You do me wrong, I'm going to sue you.
I don't know if we're going to wake up ever, but I'm just going to keep talking about it because I just keep dreaming because I got a lot of hope and I got the courage to have some faith.
You know, and quite all honesty, I really hope we don't get to a world government. I really hope I don't live to see Lucifer's coming, the second coming and all that, because that's going to be a real hard time. I know it's going to be scary. If you don't take this electronic chip, how are you going to feed your children? That's a very scary.
Yeah, that sounds like a little Harry Sparrow. You're a little kooky, man, but it's out there. The technology is available, folks, and this was it the whole Illuminati's been waiting for. The ability to tax us while we're asleep for so long that they can get all the money to build their infrastructure, meaning the International Monetary Fund and International Monetary Bank and all that, and then they get everybody to come under them, and then once they get it all together, they don't need us anymore. So then they got to work on taking away our nationalism, and after 9/11, they saw how much we were waving our flags, and so they're like, oh, we're really going to have to hammer them, and they got weather modification, and they can do anything they want. Oh, my God.
Yeah, go online, look up Nikolai Tesla. That'll amaze you. You know, he's responsible for the alternating current that we have today.
And the radio.
And the radio and a lot of other things.
He made it, but the Supreme Court said, no, Marconi, it goes back to Tesla. He's the man, Nikolai Tesla. Check it out.
Yeah, absolutely, folks. You know, we're going to get to that show. That's another little pet project. A lot of information on that. Free electricity, free energy. It's amazing. So, folks,
they couldn't make any money then, Buzz. We'd all be free, and we'd be able to sit around and do a little puff-puff.
Well, you know, if you watch Stop Bitch and Start a Revolution Thursday nights at 9:30 on Nutmeg TV.
That's us, the Department of Freedom.
You know, you'll learn why cannabis hemp has been demonized into marijuana. But we got to cut the show short now. We have to end. Willie, my brother, it's been a good show, folks.
I wish this was an hour
Thanks for letting us in
longer.
your living room once again. You know, peace and freedom.
Yeah,
and
make
God
sure
be
you
with
tune in next week for a good time. Peace.
Good night.